When my daughter told me I had 30 days to get out of my own home, I collapsed right there on my kitchen floor. Days later, I was sitting across from a lawyer who revealed the secret codicil in my late husband's will. That's when I realized family loyalty can be as fragile as a house made of playing cards. One gust of greed, and the whole thing comes tumbling down. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're from. Because believe me, what happened in my family's courtroom showdown will make your jaw drop harder than a bowling ball. I still remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning, unusually warm for October. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows of the home James and I had bought 30 years ago. The home where we'd raised our daughter Sarah. The home where we'd celebrated birthdays, mourned losses, and built a life filled with love. I was making my morning tea, Earl Grey with a splash of milk, the same routine I'd followed for decades. The kettle had just started whistling when I heard the front door open. "Mom?" Sarah's voice called out. "In the kitchen, sweetheart," I answered, reaching for a second mug. Sarah rarely visited on weekdays. She was always too busy with her real estate business, too important to stop by and check on her widowed mother. When she walked in, I knew something was wrong. Her face was tight, her designer handbag clutched like a shield against her chest. There was no kiss on the cheek, no casual chat about her week. "I need to talk to you about something," she said, placing a manila envelope on the counter between us. I remember smiling. Foolishly smiling. "Tea first? I just made a fresh pot." "This isn't a social call, Mom." Her voice was cold, professional. "It's about the house." "The house?" I echoed, confused. "My house," she corrected, sliding the envelope toward me. "I need you to vacate within 30 days. Script part separator equals. The kitchen seemed to tilt on its axis. I gripped the counter, feeling suddenly dizzy. "What are you talking about?" I managed to ask. "This is my home." Sarah's face remained impassive. "Legally, it's mine. Dad transferred ownership to me before he died. It's all there in the papers." I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a formal eviction notice, coldly stating that I, Eleanor Williams, was to vacate the premises at 1423 Maple Street within 30 days. "But why?" My voice cracked. "Where am I supposed to go? You have your social security. You can find a small apartment." She checked her expensive watch. "I've already looked into some senior living facilities that might work for you." Senior living facilities? I was only 68, healthy, and independent. This was my home. The garden I'd tended for 3 decades. The kitchen where I'd taught Sarah to bake cookies. The living room where James had proposed to me all those years ago. "This is some kind of joke," I whispered. "It's business, Mom. I need to liquidate some assets, and the house is worth a lot in today's market." "Business?" I felt something snap inside me. "I'm your mother." Sarah squared her shoulders. "And I'm trying to build something. Dad would understand. Your father would never throw me out of my own home." I shouted, my hands shaking so badly that tea sloshed over the rim of my mug onto the counter. "The house is in my name," she repeated, as if talking to a confused child. "I need you out in 30 days. I'm sorry it has to be this way." With that, she turned and walked out, the click of her heels on the hardwood floors like hammers driving nails into my heart. I stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at the eviction notice through tears. 3 decades of memories, and Sarah was treating our home like nothing more than a line item on a balance sheet. I slid down to the floor, the cold tile against my legs, and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. How could my own daughter do this to me? What had I done to deserve such cruelty? When the tears finally subsided, I felt something else rising within me. Something I hadn't felt since James died. Anger. Script part separator equals. The anger burned through my grief like wildfire through dry brush. By evening, I had moved beyond tears to something harder, sharper. I called my brother David. "She did what?" David's voice crackled with disbelief over the phone. "Eleanor, that can't be legal. She says James transferred the house to her before he died." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow but steady. For tax purposes. And you didn't know about this?
No, y whisperat.
James never mentioned it. There was a long pause. Something's not right here, Ellie. James would never have done that without protecting you. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced through the rooms of my home, touching familiar surfaces, remembering. The kitchen table where Sarah had done her homework. The living room where James and I had danced on our 25th anniversary. The hallway where we'd marked Sarah's height with pencil lines on the wall. By morning, my decision was made. I wasn't leaving. Not without a fight. David picked me up at 9. His wife, Clara, had found a lawyer who specialized in elder law, someone who could see me immediately. As we drove across town, I stared out the window, wondering how many more times I'd travel these familiar streets. She's changed, I said quietly. I don't recognize my daughter anymore. David reached over and squeezed my hand. Money does strange things to people, Ellie. But it's not even about money. We're not wealthy. This house is just a modest 3-bedroom in a nice neighborhood. Maybe there's something else going on, David suggested. Sarah's business, perhaps? The law office was in a converted Victorian downtown. Attorney Michael Brennan was younger than I expected, barely 40, with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. Mrs. Williams, I'm very sorry about your situation, he said after I'd explained everything. What your daughter is doing isn't just cruel, it may be fraudulent.
Hope flickered in my chest.
What do you mean? Did you ever sign anything relinquishing your rights to the home? Or agreeing to this transfer? No, never. And you were married to James when he supposedly transferred the deed? Yes, for over 30 years. Brennan nodded, making notes. In this state, a spouse can't transfer marital property without the other spouse's consent. Something's very wrong with this picture. For the first time since Sarah had delivered her bombshell, I felt a glimmer of something other than despair. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was determination. Script part separator ===. Mr. Brennan leaned forward, his elbows on the polished desk. Mrs. Williams, I need to ask some difficult questions. Was your husband experiencing any cognitive decline before his death? Any unusual financial decisions? I shook my head. James was sharp until the end. Heart attack took him suddenly. And your relationship with Sarah? Has it always been strained? No, I whispered, my voice catching. We were close. At least I thought we were. She changed after her marriage to Thomas 5 years ago. Started her real estate business. Became obsessed with appearances. Brennan made more notes. I'd like to request James's complete financial and legal records. And I want to file for an emergency stay on this eviction immediately.
Can you do that?
I can, and I will. His voice hardened. What your daughter is attempting may constitute elder abuse. We won't let her get away with it. 3 days later, I received another visitor. This time, it was Thomas, Sarah's husband, arriving in his gleaming black Mercedes. Eleanor, he said smoothly, not waiting for an invitation before stepping inside. I thought we should chat. I stood my ground in the entryway, arms crossed. About how you and my daughter are trying to make me homeless. He sighed dramatically. You're making this more difficult than it needs to be. Sarah's business is expanding. We need capital. This house is an underutilized asset. Underutilized asset? My voice rose. This is my home. Was your home? He corrected coldly. Look, we're prepared to offer you 3 months in a furnished apartment while you find something permanent. But if you fight this, that offer disappears. I felt my hands trembling, but kept my voice steady. Get out. Don't be foolish, Eleanor.
You can't win this. Get out of my house.
Each word was a bullet. He shrugged, adjusting his expensive cufflinks.
Have it your way.
But remember, Sarah learned her ruthlessness from James. You think your husband was a saint? You have no idea what he was capable of. That cryptic parting shot haunted me for days. What did Thomas mean about James? My husband had been kind, gentle, ethical to a fault. When I called Brennan to report the conversation, his response was immediate.
They're scared, he said.
That threat about withdrawing their offer is meaningless legally, but it tells me they're worried. And that comment about your husband? Classic misdirection. Script part separator equals. The next morning, I woke to pounding on my front door. Through the peephole, I saw a process server holding papers. My knees nearly buckled. Mrs. Williams? He asked when I opened the door. These are for you. Court documents. Sarah was accelerating the eviction process, claiming I was a hostile occupant. Reading her cold legalese describing me, her own mother, as if I were a dangerous squatter made me physically ill. I called Brennan immediately. They're panicking, he said reassuringly. We've hit a nerve.
How?
We haven't even filed anything substantial yet.
Exactly.
They're afraid of what we might find. That afternoon, Brennan's assistant delivered a thick folder of documents. These just arrived from the county records office, she explained. Mr. Brennan says you should look at page 17 immediately. With trembling fingers, I flipped to the indicated page. It was a deed transfer for my home, dated just 6 months ago, not 3 years ago when James died. My heart raced. The signature on the document was supposedly James's, but my husband had been dead for years when this was signed. Oh my God, I whispered. Mr. Brennan is filing for an emergency hearing tomorrow, the assistant said. He's also contacting the district attorney's office. When I called David, he rushed over immediately. Forgery, he said, examining the document.
Clear as day.
Sarah, or more likely Thomas, forged Dad's signature. But why now? Why wait 3 years after James died? David's expression darkened. You mentioned Sarah's business is expanding? I've heard rumors about trouble with her investments. Big debts. Failed property deals. A horrifying thought struck me. She's trying to sell my house out from under me to cover her financial problems.
Exactly.
And they needed it done quickly. That night, I couldn't sleep. The betrayal felt even deeper now. Not just eviction, but fraud. My own daughter participating in a criminal scheme. The next morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was Angela, my neighbor for 20 years. Eleanor, she said urgently. There's a for sale sign going up in your front yard right now. Script part separator equals. I threw on my robe and rushed outside. Sure enough, a man from Prestige Realty, Sarah's company, was hammering a for sale sign into my lawn. Stop that immediately, I shouted, marching across the dewy grass. You have no right. The man looked startled. Ma'am, I have orders from the owner. I am the owner, I insisted, my voice shaking with rage. He pulled out his phone. Let me call Mrs. Harrington.
Sarah.
He was calling Sarah. I didn't wait. I grabbed the sign and yanked it from the ground with strength I didn't know I possessed at my age. The man backed away, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. My lawyer will be contacting Prestige Realty, I said firmly. This property is under legal dispute. Any attempts to sell it constitute fraud. 10 minutes later, my phone exploded with texts from Sarah. What are you doing? Stop making this difficult. You're embarrassing yourself. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Brennan. They tried to put up a for sale sign, I told him, still trembling with adrenaline. Perfect, he said, surprising me. Take photos. This proves intent to sell fraudulently obtained property. I'm adding it to our emergency filing. The hearing was scheduled for Friday, just 3 days away. Meanwhile, Sarah escalated her campaign. That afternoon, a locksmith arrived, claiming he had orders to change the locks. I stood in the doorway, blocking his entry. This house is under legal dispute. If you attempt to change these locks, you'll be party to a criminal act. The locksmith, an older man with kind eyes, hesitated. Look, lady, I'm just doing my job. Your job might get you arrested as an accessory to fraud, I countered. He left without changing the locks. That night, David and his wife, Clara, insisted I stay with them. It's not safe, Ellie, Clara argued. What if they come back while you're sleeping? Script part separator equals. I reluctantly agreed to stay with David and Clara. As I packed an overnight bag, my hands shook with a mixture of fear and rage. How had it come to this? being afraid to sleep in my own home. At 3 a.m., my phone rang. It was our elderly neighbor, Mr. Peterson. "Eleanor, there's someone at your house," he whispered. "A moving truck." I bolted upright. "A what?" "They're taking things out. Furniture. Boxes." David was already awake, grabbing his car keys. "I'm calling the police," he said grimly. We raced across town, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. When we pulled onto my street, the moving truck was clearly visible, lights blazing in my driveway. Men were carrying out my couch, the same couch where James and I had curled up for movie nights for 20 years. "Stop!" I screamed, running toward them. "That's my property." A tall man in a suit stepped forward. I recognized him immediately. Thomas, Sarah's husband. "Eleanor," he said smoothly, "you're trespassing. This property belongs to my wife now." "The hell it does," David growled, phone to his ear. "Police are on their way." Thomas smirked. "By all means. We have the deed. You have nothing." Just then, another car pulled up. Sarah stepped out, her face a mask of cold determination. "Mom, you're making this so much harder than it needs to be," she said. "I raised you better than this," I replied, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. "Your father would be ashamed." Something flickered in her eyes, pain, perhaps, or guilt, but it vanished quickly. "Dad transferred this house to me," she insisted. "It's mine to sell." "With a forged document?" I challenged. "I've seen it, Sarah. The transfer dated 6 months ago, with your father's signature." "Your dead father's signature." Police sirens wailed in the distance, and Thomas's composure slipped. "Get everything back inside," he hissed to the movers. "Now." Script part separator equals. The police arrived with flashing lights, casting eerie blue shadows across my front lawn. 2 officers stepped out, one older with a weathered face, the other barely older than Sarah had been when she graduated college. "What's going on here?" the older officer asked, taking in the scene. The half-empty moving truck, the furniture hastily abandoned on the lawn, Thomas and Sarah standing defiant while David kept his arm protectively around my shoulders. "These people are attempting to remove property from my home without permission," I said firmly. Thomas stepped forward, all smooth confidence. "Officer, this is a family misunderstanding. My wife owns this property. Her mother is having trouble accepting that." "I have documentation proving fraud," I countered, my voice stronger than I felt. "They forged my dead husband's signature on property transfer documents." The younger officer looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, property disputes are civil matters." "This isn't just a property dispute," David interrupted. "It's criminal fraud. We have proof." I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos of the documents Brennan had provided. "My husband supposedly signed this 6 months ago. He's been dead for 3 years. The older officer's expression changed, hardening as he examined the photos. "That's a serious accusation." "We have an emergency hearing scheduled Friday," I added. "My attorney has filed for a restraining order to prevent them from entering the property until this is resolved." Sarah stepped forward, her designer heels sinking slightly into the damp grass. "Mom, stop this nonsense. You're embarrassing yourself." The contempt in her voice shocked me. This wasn't my daughter. This was a stranger wearing her face. "Sir," the older officer addressed Thomas, "I'd advise you to remove your moving truck and cease attempting to remove property until this legal matter is settled." Thomas's face flushed with anger. "This is outrageous. Do you know who I am? Someone who's about to be arrested for creating a disturbance if you don't comply immediately," the officer replied evenly. Script part separator equals. The movers began hastily returning furniture to the house, under the watchful eyes of the police. Thomas paced, making angry phone calls, while Sarah stood apart, arms crossed, glaring at me as if I were the villain in this scenario. "This isn't over," she hissed as she walked past me toward their Mercedes. "You have no idea what you're getting into." After they left, the officers helped me secure the house and took my statement. They couldn't guarantee arrests would be made. That would be up to the district attorney, but they promised to file a report about the attempted removal of property. Mrs. Williams, the older officer said kindly, I'd recommend staying somewhere else until your hearing. People who commit fraud often don't stop there. I nodded, exhausted beyond words, and let David drive me back to his home. As I settled into their guest bedroom, I felt hollowed out. The daughter I had raised, taught to ride a bike, nursed through chicken pox and heartbreaks, was now a stranger threatening me. What happened to her? I whispered to the dark ceiling. Where did I go wrong? Sleep eluded me. Around dawn, I checked my phone and found a text from an unknown number. Your daughter owes dangerous people a lot of money. This isn't just about a house. For your safety, meet me at Riverview Park, noon tomorrow.
Come alone.
My heart pounded. Should I tell David? Call Brennan? Or meet this mysterious messenger who claimed to know what was really happening? By morning, I'd made my decision. After assuring David and Clara I just needed fresh air, I took a taxi to Riverview Park. The bright sunshine felt at odds with the shadowy meeting I was heading toward. I sat on a bench overlooking the river, tensing every time someone walked past. At precisely noon, a woman in sunglasses and a business suit sat beside me. Eleanor Williams? She asked quietly. Who are you? I countered. Someone who knows what your daughter and son-in-law have been doing. And believe me, the house is just the beginning. Script part separator . She removed her sunglasses, revealing tired eyes with faint worry lines. My name is Vanessa Mitchell. I worked for Prestige Realty, your daughter's company, until last week. I studied her face, looking for deception. Why are you telling me this? Because I was fired for questioning certain financial practices. Vanessa glanced around nervously. Thomas has been running a real estate investment scheme. They take money from investors, promising returns from property developments that never materialize. A Ponzi scheme? I asked, my stomach churning. She nodded grimly. Your house isn't the only property they've tried to grab. They've falsified documents for at least 3 other properties I know of.
My God.
How much money are we talking about? Millions, she whispered. And they owe payments to investors by the end of the month. That's why they're desperate to sell your house immediately. I felt dizzy with the implications. Are you saying Sarah is part of this? Vanessa hesitated. She signed documents. Whether she fully understood what Thomas was doing, I can't say. But she's legally implicated. She reached into her bag and handed me a USB drive. These are copies of files I managed to download before they locked me out. Bank statements, fake property deeds, investor lists. Your lawyer will know what to do with them. Why are you helping me? I asked. Her eyes hardened. Because Thomas threatened me when I questioned him. Said I'd regret crossing him. And because what they're doing to you is wrong. I clutched the USB drive like a lifeline. Have you gone to the police?
Not yet.
I'm afraid, Mrs. Williams. These people have connections. That's why I came to you first. Script part separator . As we sat there, Vanessa shared more disturbing details. According to her, Thomas had connections with some shady real estate developers from his previous job in Chicago. People who didn't take kindly to losing their investments. These aren't people who file lawsuits when they don't get paid, she explained. They send messages in other ways. A chill ran through me. Are you saying my daughter could be in danger? Everyone involved is in danger, Vanessa replied. Thomas has been robbing Peter to pay Paul for months now. The whole thing is about to collapse. I clutched the USB drive tighter. I need to get this to my lawyer immediately. As I stood to leave, Vanessa grabbed my wrist. Be careful. They're watching you. The words followed me like a shadow as I took a roundabout route back to David's house. I kept looking over my shoulder, suddenly seeing threats everywhere. When I arrived, David was pacing the living room. Where have you been? He demanded. I've been calling for hours. I showed him the USB drive and explained everything. His face grew paler with each revelation. This isn't just about your house anymore, he said grimly. This is serious criminal activity. We called Brennan, who agreed to meet us immediately. On the way to his office, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. You need to stop this now. You don't understand what you're doing. For the first time, I detected fear beneath her anger. Not for me, for herself. Script part separator ===. Brennan's face grew increasingly grave as he examined the files on the USB drive. This is extensive, he finally said, looking up at me with new respect in his eyes. Your daughter and son-in-law are in very serious trouble. Criminal trouble? David asked. Brennan nodded. Securities fraud. Wire fraud. Document forgery. They could be looking at federal charges. The room seemed to spin around me. My daughter, my Sarah, facing prison? What about my house? I asked, my voice small. That's actually the least of their problems now, Brennan replied. But with this evidence, we'll definitely stop the eviction. In fact, he leaned forward. We need to change our strategy for tomorrow's hearing. The next morning, as David drove me to the courthouse, my phone rang. It was Sarah. Mom, she said, her voice uncharacteristically shaky. We need to talk before this hearing. I think we're past that point, I replied coldly.
You don't understand, she insisted.
Thomas, he's not who you think. He's not who I thought either. For a moment, I heard my daughter again. Not the cold stranger who had served me with eviction papers, but my Sarah, frightened and confused. It's too late, Sarah, I said, my heart breaking all over again. I know everything. As we pulled up to the courthouse, I was shocked to see news vans and reporters gathered on the steps. How had they gotten wind of our case? Mrs. Williams. A reporter thrust a microphone toward me as David helped me from the car. Is it true your daughter forged documents to steal your home? Another called out. Have you heard about the SEC investigation into Prestige Realty? David shielded me, pushing through the crowd. Inside, the courthouse hallway was buzzing with whispers and stares. Our private family tragedy had somehow become public spectacle. Script part separator ===. Brennan met us inside, his face grim. The story broke this morning, he explained. Not just about your case, about the whole investment scheme. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. What does this mean for today's hearing? It means we're not the only ones presenting evidence, he said. The district attorney's office is here too. The courtroom was packed when we entered. I spotted Sarah and Thomas sitting with their attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Sarah looked pale and drawn, while Thomas whispered furiously in their lawyer's ear. When our eyes met across the room, I expected to see hatred in Sarah's. Instead, I saw something that shook me to my core. Fear. All rise. The bailiff called as Judge Miranda Coleman entered. The proceedings began with our motion to halt the eviction, but quickly expanded as the district attorney stepped forward to present evidence of the larger fraud scheme. Thomas's face grew increasingly ashen as bank records, falsified documents, and witness statements were entered into evidence. Then came the bombshell. Your Honor, the DA announced, we have reason to believe Mr. Harrington has booked a flight to a non-extradition country scheduled to depart tonight. We're requesting he be taken into custody immediately. Chaos erupted. Thomas lunged toward the exit only to be tackled by court officers. Sarah screamed, her composure finally shattering completely. Through the tumult, I could only watch in horror. This wasn't justice anymore. It was destruction of my family, of everything I thought I knew. When order was finally restored, Judge Coleman addressed me directly. Mrs. Williams, in light of the evidence, I'm not only denying the eviction but ordering an immediate investigation into the fraudulent transfer of your property. Your home remains legally yours. Relief flooded through me, but it was hollow. What good was winning when my daughter was being led away in handcuffs alongside her husband? Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed again. Mrs. Williams, how does it feel to see your daughter arrested? I pushed through the mob of reporters, my heart shattering with each step. David kept his arm around me, shielding me from the barrage of questions as we hurried to his car. 6 months later, I sat in my kitchen, truly mine again, watching as Sarah placed her coffee mug on the table between us. She looked thinner, older, the designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Thank you for seeing me, Mom, she said softly. After Thomas's conviction for fraud, Sarah had made a plea deal, testifying against him and the other conspirators. Community service instead of prison time. A second chance I wasn't sure she deserved. I was blinded, she whispered. By his promises, by greed, by the life I thought we were building. I convinced myself you'd be fine. You were going to make your own mother homeless, I said, the words still painful to speak aloud. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, she replied, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know if I could ever fully trust her again. The wound was too deep, the betrayal too complete. But as I looked at her, this broken version of my daughter, I saw something I recognized. Regret. Later that evening, as I tended the garden that had almost been taken from me, I reflected on how quickly we can lose what matters most. Not just homes, but family.
Trust. Love.
The doorbell rang. On my porch stood Vanessa, the whistleblower whose courage had helped save not just my home, but perhaps my daughter's soul. Just checking in, she said with a small smile. How are you holding up? I invited her in for tea, realizing that from the ashes of betrayal, new connections can form. New beginnings can emerge. My home was still standing. And somehow, against all odds, so was I. As I closed the door behind Vanessa that evening, I realized something profound. Homes aren't just buildings, they're vessels for our stories. Mine had weathered betrayal and deceit, but remained standing. Just like me. And though the road to forgiveness would be long, I was finally ready to take the first step.